I'd like to welcome you to the first session of our 2025 series of continued education workshops. We're very excited about these sessions, which have been designed specifically for veteran business owners to allow each of you to take a deeper dive into some key market topics relevant to the procurement landscape right now. We have 4 engaging sessions lined up for you over the next couple of weeks, all focused on the theme of the changing digital landscape. Our goal in bringing you these sessions is to empower you and your business to take full advantage of AI's transformative power. We can't wait for you to hear from the Power Pack lineup that we have in store for you. This workshop series is brought to you by the Veteran Institute for Procurement in partnership with the SBA and the Veterans Business Outreach Center as an extended training benefit for VIP graduates, current applicants, or any veteran small business owner looking for insights to help them maximize their business potential. As many of you know, VIP offers 6 training curriculums in total. 3 of these are 100% focused on the federal procurement landscape. These are Start, Grow, and Advance. 3 are sector specific to help you achieve success in niche areas such as aerospace and international markets. And most recently, our newest, which is our commercial class, which focuses on doing business with the corporate sector. Each of the offerings give veteran-owned small businesses the tools they need to compete and win in the federal marketplace. The programs are offered at no cost to veteran entrepreneurs. We are currently accepting applications for all 6 VIP programs: Start, Grow, Advance, International, Aerospace, and Commercial. We've got an exciting year of training ahead with 4 Start classes and 2 Grow classes scheduled in the next 6 months. These are our most sought-after curriculums, and because of that demand, we've been able to secure funding to offer them much more frequently than in prior years. For those that may have already graduated from either Grow and/or Start and are now interested in either Advance, International, or Commercial, there are still spots available for those sessions in 2025. VIP International is designed to help veteran-owned small business pursue federal and commercial opportunities overseas. The class dates are set for March 18th and 20th, so just in a couple months. Then VIP Advance is for more mature organizations with at least $10 million of annual revenues and designed to help those organizations progress to the next tier. This class will take place from April 8th through 10th of this year. And lastly, VIP Commercial will help you navigate the complexities of commercial contracting, and this is scheduled for the fall of 2025. Just a heads up, these last 3 courses are only offered once a year, and applications are accepted and reviewed on a first-come, first-served basis. So this is your chance to apply now at our website, which is nationalvip.org, and avoid waiting another year to attend. Space is limited, so make sure that you act quickly. We look forward to seeing many of you in person at an upcoming VIP class. And now, what you've been waiting for, I am thrilled to introduce our first speaker of this series, and that's Mr. Joseph Raetano. Joe Raetano is a distinguished AI and cybersecurity expert with over 30 years of experience spanning government, defense, energy, and commercial sectors. He's a U.S. Navy veteran, a transition from a career as an explosive ordnance disposal technician and cryptologic information warfare officer to become a leading figure in artificial intelligence, machine learning, and cybersecurity innovation. He is currently the AI lead at the Department of Veterans Affairs. And in this role, he spearheads groundbreaking AI initiatives, including the deployment of the VA's first generative AI pipeline, which processes over 1.5 million clinical notes daily to drive actionable insights for veteran care. He's also leading the
Operationalizing.
Thank you. Operationalizing of AI
That's a
at
tough one.
scale. Thank you, Joe. Through the Summit Data Platform, advancing AI-enabled capabilities for the federal sector. We encourage you to engage throughout the presentations. Feel free to ask questions anytime using the Q&A box on your Zoom toolbar. please don't use the chat box for questions. Use the Q&A box. We'll do our best to address your questions as we go along, and any of those that we can't get to will be answered afterwards. We look forward to your questions. And lastly, the slides and a video recording from today's session will be provided to you at the end of the four-part workshop series. And now, gives me great pleasure to welcome and introduce Joe Raetano. Joe, it's all yours, and thank you for joining us today.
Well, welcome, veterans. It's great to be here. I was lucky and enjoy being asked to do things like this. As Mauricio said, I'm an AI lead and architect at the VA. I love doing that kind of work, technical work. I'm actually a computer scientist by trade, and I love working on anything technology based. And what a great way to start the year is to talk about generative AI. So I'll share my screen. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the generative AI journey. And it started, of course, for those of you that don't know anything about this journey, it started back in the 50s with computer science. And artificial intelligence is a way to create intelligent machines that can replicate or exceed human intelligence. And in the 90s, we really jumped into machine learning that enables machines to learn from existing data and improve upon that data to make decisions or predictions. And in the 2012 era, we started getting into deep learning, and which is a technique that uses layers of neural networks or neurons that process the data and make decisions that way. And it takes very complex information and breaks it down into a usable format, which led way into the 2018, 2020s with generative AI, with the GPT models and alike, to be able to create new written, visual, auditory content with given prompts or existing data. And it was really the transformer model that gave way to these large language models. So what is an LLM? So an LLM really has three basic areas of capability. You have a basic one where you've got a world knowledge that it has trained on from things like Wikipedia and multiple choice, and you can see Q&A, that's question and answering. So at a basic level, it can do a lot of great question answering. In comprehension, being able to do reading comprehension is a big technique that it also utilizes. It also can do things like Boolean question and answering, multiple choice question and answering, and summarization and simplification. Now, those are really excellent capabilities. So when you're asking the chatbot a question, that's what it's doing. It's comprehending what you're asking in what context, and it can answer that and simplify the answer in how you can answer it. You can even ask the LLM, hey, can you make that simpler for me to understand? Like, I'm not technical, I need to understand it a little bit better. And it will break it down, and you can keep asking more and more questions to illuminate what it is you're trying to understand. The other big area is multilingual, being able to translate text. Now, in the 2010s, 2018 timeframe, BERT was, and still is a big contender, and BERT is trained on multiple languages, but only a couple. It doesn't do like the full XNLI loadout of around 25 languages. And it can only do cross-lingual question and answers to a minimum extent until we got to GPT 3.5. And then we really started seeing this multilingual capability. And you could do cross-lingual tasks. So you could ask a question in English and have it perform tasks in Spanish or German or French, which is pretty powerful. Then you have the coding. Coding, you'll see a lot of work with these LLMs assisting developers in coding with function calling, API calling. As we start moving a little bit more forward in capability, the emerging technologies are things like instruction following, This is where you start hearing turn-based or few shot or completion and task definition. And in these emerging technologies, you can start seeing where it can help with, documents that are very complex. Because now we're starting to get into reasoning, where it can provide some common sense to some pretty tough language, to create symbolic capabilities that can do arithmetic capabilities and logical capabilities. So that side of the house is very important when you're breaking down complex things and trying to make some sense out of it. It also can do in-context learning, positive, negative examples, step-by-step solving, symbolic referencing. And then as we start evolving even more, we get into this augmented area where we can start interacting with the users, assignment planning, virtual acting, physical acting. We can do things like self-improvement with self-criticism and self-refinement. And then we can do more tool utilization with agents and task decomposition, tool planning, knowledge-based utilization with retrieval augmented generation. So a lot of this you can find in a paper called Large Language Models, a Survey. We'll talk a little bit more of that if we have time at the end. So at the VA, all this really happened in 2024. So in February, Azure Open, we're a Microsoft shop for the main part on the Summit Data Analytic Platform. That's what SDP is. And Azure OpenAI became generally available in February, along with the related AI services, such as AI Search. The AI services is sort of a whole host of boutique services it contained inside that help enable some of these other capabilities. And so you get other things like AI language service for that multilingual capability, text analytics for health, which we're focused on. And then you get tools like Azure Machine Learning, Azure Databricks, and Cosmo DB to name a few. These services went FedRAMP High in June, and the FedRAMP process is pretty important for federal agencies. And we're a FedRAMP High shop because we're dealing with veterans data, and we take the protection of the veteran data very, very, very. It's very tightly controlled, and it's very important to us. So with these services, we could start now that they went FedRAMP High. We got those enabled, we did the security impact assessment, and we got moving on production AI use cases. In September, we were able to enable VA's first generative AI-enabled data pipeline called Clever, as Mauricio had described. Now, in October, we started with a template called Information Assistant. It's a Microsoft template. It is a chatbot on the front end, so it looks a lot like ChatGPT, and has a RAG backend. So it has a retrieval augmented generation backend where you can work on your own data. Now, there's a whole process to that of chunking and vectorizing that information to make it useful for the large language model. We can go into that a little bit more at the end if anyone has questions about that, but I want to keep this as high level as possible. And then it also has the capability to be an agent template. So this gives us our infrastructure on FedRAMP High to be able to create these services and enable some of the clinician ideas that they're having. In December, I completed the security impact assessment, so just recently. And then at the year end, we've completed about 36 AI ML community of practice sessions. And that's in February when this whole thing kicked off. I initiated this sort of community of practice within the VA to help teams understand what the services were, train them up on it, and get moving on it. So a few years back, I worked at GSA's Artificial Intelligence Center of Excellence, and we created this capability maturity map or model. And essentially what we have is we have operational areas on the left, and then we have maturity levels 1 through 5. And this is based on Carnegie Mellon Software Engineering Institute's capability maturity model. And we co-opted that, and for good reason, because when I would go into different agencies, I'd have to identify where they were in their, data maturity, essentially, to see if they were ready for AI capabilities. And if you look down at the bottom, you've got sort of this people ops layer. And in that people ops layer, you really have to start off with, hey, Do you have an AI employee journey created? Are the languages documented that you're going to use? KSAs, these are the knowledge, skills, and abilities identified. And do you have successful agency projects or use cases identified? Now, as you start moving in maturity, right? Because the maturity is initial, ad hoc, individual project, repeatable team project, defined program. Most of the agencies we got to started working on defining the program is where they were. Some had some repeatable team projects, but most were individual projects. But you really want to get to manage portfolio of different capabilities, and you really want to optimize that engine enterprise. So, we go back down to these levels, and you'll get this in the presentation, so you can kind of, I know this is probably a little bit of an eye chart, but you have to really identify that talent map and you've got to train folks for what you need them to do. So it all starts with people at a base level. That's why I have them at the beginning. And you got to recruit those people. You know how hard it is to find people that know what they're doing in AI and not just posing and talking about it and has read a magazine article about it. I mean, it is hard. And so, um, you want to be able to have that people that are knowledgeable in CI/CD pipelines, agile methodologies, and understand the sustainment cycle and where they fit in. As you start moving up, you really need an infrastructure. Now, a lot of people are still on-prem at these different agencies. Like, look at the Social Security Administration, some of the other older ones. They have outdated, 50-year-old systems. I was looking at one that not too long ago was about 50 years old and still in production. And a lot of these, you'll see a lot of groups starting to move to cloud. So that's why I call it cloud ops. But this could be interchanged for infrastructure ops. It really doesn't matter because we have a lot of lift and shift from on-prem to cloud. And when you're doing procurement for a project, you really need to identify what they're using for infrastructure because that's going to dictate what people you're going to apply. Is it a Microsoft shop? Is it AWS? Is it Google? And not we don't have that much Google in the federal government, but we do have some, like GSA uses it. So you have to get this as a base before you start moving on DevOps. Like so DevOps, you start developing. It's like, what are you developing on? Well, for cloud resources, if you're like us, you need to know Azure and you need to do DevOps on Azure. And so as we start moving towards more of a program, you want to have dev test and prod environments because you want to be able to have the freedom to develop. And then you need to test on the real data. So you have to have the security impact assessment done. So this is where you really need to understand the security ops layer, right? Because, once you've got your development pipelines identified, you need to secure them. So this is why it's the next layer. So you got to have code validation. There's a whole, TRM process and a security impact assessment at the VA. Various agencies have different ways of accomplishing it, but it's all based on FISMA. And so you really have to have your wits about you on this sort of security layer. You should know a lot about what it takes. We're moving into these sort of container or secure container environments for the development. So secure container security validation is important. So you should have an understanding about that. Because, when you want to scale your capability, you want to know that, you've created your container, it's secure, and it can be scaled up horizontally or vertically, however you're doing it. Um, so then we
Excuse
get
me,
to data
Joe.
ops. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but I was just going to suggest that it may be helpful if we did a polling question,
Oh yeah,
just
absolutely.
maybe so it'll give you a sense of the familiarity of the of the attendees or the participants here. Um, yeah, so go ahead. Maybe you can just present this.
All right. So everybody, let's do a poll. How would you describe your current familiarity with AI ML technologies in the federal government? Let's get a poll and see how many folks answer the question. And meanwhile, I'll look at the chat and see if anybody's. Let's get to Zoom here. Let me know when that poll's finished. Kind of lost it.
Yep, just waiting one more second. They're coming through. We almost have everyone answered. I'm gonna shut it down in about 10 seconds.
Looks like we got some questions. All right, my first question. Oh, here's the poll back. All right, good. All right, well, look, we got quite a few. We got we got a couple of experts. We've got some familiar. 74 novice, very limited, and 50 not familiar, just getting started. Okay. All right, well, good. I won't go too deep, but I will answer some of these questions. So, what are our thoughts on educating your users and other decision making on ML ops or the data lifecycle? Yeah. Yeah, it's data literacy is big. If we look at this data ops layer, I'm going to start getting into that, so maybe it can answer some questions. But I'm always like looking at if the agency is ready to go with AI, it means they have a very mature data ops layer. So you kind of want the data ops layer to be sort of this, there's engineering support for data management activities, there's a data catalog, there's a data governance team. You want to at least be in a defined program state before you get moving. But that was a good question. Um, the team can answer the VIP Grow one for Sharon. Um, let's see, will VIP connect any ongoing deeper dive AI courses for veterans? So I have an open source course that I've developed. I can put it in the answers, but here there is a course that I'm developing right here for an advanced large language model course. This is what I use at the VA because there's just so much and it's so complex that I'm using that as a guide myself as I develop the course. So let's see. So I'm not sure for the VIP team what they're going to be offering, but
Yeah, if I could just jump in, Joe. In terms of this series is what we're offering in terms of VIP. So the four sessions, this is the first one of the four. So over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be discussing AI. We talk about it sort of on a general level at the classes, but we're still in the process of determining whether we're going to have it as a particular portion of our curriculum, whether we're going to devote a session to it. So for right now, this is what we're offering to answer that question. And I see some questions about status of applications. You all can follow up with the VIP team. My contact information will be there as well. We can follow up with individual questions about status of applications for VIP classes. Back to you, Joe.
yeah. So here's another question about the community of practice that I started. We'll talk more a little bit about that, and it wasn't that challenging, but we'll talk a little bit more about the community of practice in a few minutes. Uh, Let's see, especially in AI-driven cybersecurity, has the VA explored deploying private on-prem LLMs to analyze data behind the VA firewall without sending sensitive information? We're going to talk about that, Dexter, a little bit about the information assistant and how I'm plumbing in data into the information assistant that's protected inside VA. All right, well, let me get back. We'll answer some more questions in a little while. Let me finish up the maturity model real quick. And so the question came up about data ops, and some organizations have shoeboxes of data locally stored. And it's not really repeatable yet. There's no data discovery. It's ad hoc. It's like, hey, do you have the data? I don't know. We'll have to find it or create it. Once you get into this defined program like Summit has, where we plumb in the world's largest veteran data repository, data warehouse into Azure Data Lake, in the cloud, it's just massive. And, we have a defined program for that. We have self-service for adding new data sets now and preparing, and we work to prepare those data sets and we curate those data sets for ML projects. Do we have this optimized enterprise yet, even at the VA? Not yet. We are working in that direction, but we are definitely on track. Now, once you start getting to define program, you can definitely jump into the ML ops layer, like because you need that data, or you're going to be just constantly diving down in the data ops layer, and you're never really going to train any models or use LLMs or use do auto ML unless that data is moved. Now, you could do it ad hoc. Definitely, you could do it ad hoc, but it's going to be painful, and you're going to like as you mature, you're going to be like, hey, we need a defined program. So, this ML ops layer is all about the infrastructure, the compute and capabilities that you need, the algorithms, the models. I mean, this is a technical area right here that you're going to have to hire the right people in to do that work. Now, once you get into the AOps layer, and the reason why I have this separated from ML is really now this is where you're applying into the products, right? And then you're maintaining those products. So it's all about the product management goals and getting those products in the hands of the clinicians who serve veterans for me, for my part. But for whatever agency you're supporting, you're focused on the mission. So use this for whatever you need. All right, so here's, when we're talking about the product, let's talk about, this is the VA product manager's journey to AI capabilities. I created this about 2 years ago, and I'm working to shortcut some of these. Now, as you see, there's the journey. And so it goes all the way from finding and evaluating ideas to placing the idea into production. And now I've after the clever pipeline, I have that under my belt. Information assistance coming next. I'll talk about that in a sec. Now, there's this experience level of folks that have to do certain things. And so the customer experience, that's what this is all about. So you see this like green smiley face, and then you have red down the bottom. I should put this mad face at the bottom, actually. But everything's in red because it is so hard to get across the finish line. And so no one's happy. And we're working to fix that. But every agency's like that. So let's zoom in a little bit and talk about, hey, the beginning part for anyone is to broker those ideas and use cases because you need to find and evaluate those ideas. So, maybe you have a product owner or a project manager in charge of that, and you got to work with for us, we work with the clinicians and data scientists to resource those ideas. So, the clinician says, hey, I got this issue. I want to do this. I've seen the LLMs. I've played with them. I want to get in there. And so I pair them up with one of my data scientists, and then they work through it to see if it's a validated use case. So a lot of times that information was coming in ad hoc. There is no central location to store those ideas, and so they can be tracked over time because this clinician might, several other visits, because the VA is so big, other clinicians might have similar ideas. So we need to centralize, the use case ideas. And a lot of these come in the way of an AI inventory. So if you see a lot of the executive orders that came out and things like that, it's all about AI use case management and understanding where the agency is heading and have that sort of central clearinghouse. Now, a lot of those use cases aren't in production. They're just ideas. So even though you'll see all these federal AI use cases, a lot of them aren't real. They're just ideas. And so this is one way to kind of go after that. So, a lot of, you guys can read through a lot of that text, but we'll just go through the journey. So basically you get the backlog of ideas going, you're going to have to sell the idea to the business unit that has the money, right? The purse strings. You'll want to start or create some sort of a memorandum of agreement or just emails back and forth saying, hey, you're going to do this thing. You might want to have a design workshop and identify the use case, all the players, who's going, so you can do that requirements analysis. Then you want to create a pilot. So that's what I do. Like I understand where the clinician wants to go. I create a quick pilot with some either synthetic data, but since we have a lot of stuff, working in the pre-production environment, the production environment, and we have access to the clinical data, we can pull that in really quickly and be like, is this what you want? Is this what you mean? And then make a decision to move forward. So we kind of do that in that pilot phase. But know that if you don't have that architecture, you're going to have to kind of be thinking, all right, how am I going to do this pilot, right? And so what we have is this sort of process design document to elicit those requirements. And then we do a statement of work. So once that statement of work this is where you come in with the acquisition support. So there's a lot of work before we even get to the statement of work. Now the VA uses PTEMS or TIS. PTEMS is for the system integrators with developer support, and then TIS is for the program and project management. And they use task order contracts like large BPAs for that. Then we get into that request for quote. We do this SI onboarding. Now I need to add more time to this SI onboarding. You guys, for anybody that's worked in the federal space, you know how long it takes to onboard people. And this is the reason why I have a white glove data science team sitting on our platform in Summit, because we can just take these ideas and run with them faster because it just takes a long time. So from my experience, you get new people onboarded. You're not sure if they're the right fit. Some aren't, some are. And it's like a 50-50 shot. And then it takes probably a year for people to understand the environment that they're in and actually be able to use the tools appropriately. So kind of a crawl, walk, run. They're not running until about a year. That's what I'm seeing. For data, you've got to acquire the data that you're going to use, data agreement, data card. Now, like I said, I've kind of shortcut a lot of this, but for every federal agency, you're going to have to do something similar. And then, of course, you acquire that data and then you do this solutions discovery document. The next thing is a part of this, you should have been already on this, but specify the analytic platform needs. This is huge. This is when you find out, hey, is it an Azure shop? Is it a AWS shop? And you're going to have to make sure that back here, when you do the SI onboarding, that you already know what analytic platform it is. Now, when you're starting to do this solution design, you're starting a solution. You've got to fill out a whole bunch of forms for access, get that analytic account creation, and get access to the analytic platform. Now, at the VA, we've got several, but I focus on Summit. It's the production pipeline, it's Azure, and it's connected to CDW, where we can get all the clinical data. And if it's not CDW with all the clinical data, it probably is VBA, which is the veteran benefits data that go in here and the veteran experiences that go in here as well. So we are definitely moving out in a fast way. We're kind of starting to short circuit a lot of this process as we go. And you'll want to do the same thing for your agency. Now, once you've created your initial product, you're going to want a test plan so you can test again and make sure that that's what you're getting a true and accurate description of what you tried to build. You've got projects, status reports, and then developing models and deploying endpoints or into software. This is a never-ending story. I need to put a little, line here back to the data because as new data comes in, you retrain the model to deploy the model. Now that is the old way of doing machine learning modeling because now we're using large language models for classification and we're doing things like prompt engineering and other things to use as a classifier. So when we can use a lightweight LLM, we are using it to short circuit the training evolution. Then there's change request forms, the authority to operate. Now, what I don't have in here for the ATO is the security impact assessment that we have to do to deploy this model into production. There is a whole litany of things that you have to do to secure and make sure that you're not affecting the ATO when you deploy these models. Then you want to transition the tool to the sponsor and ensure you do the training profile update because there's a lot of training and then place it into production. I know I'm tired just talking through this process, but it just, you guys will have this, you all will have this. You can read through this and kind of, help you to guide you on all the steps necessary to be able to deploy AI capabilities for the federal government. Make sense? Maybe it's a good time to do another polling question.
I'm launching another one right now.
All right, one of the top challenges. What do you believe is the biggest challenge to adopting AI in federal agencies? And I'll take a look at some of the questions while we're doing that. All right. Let's see, Josh Proctor. That's a name I remember. So how would a digital marketing agency get started in the federal government contracting space? Oh, um, I don't know. Um, digital marketing. Well, I know the VA does a lot of marketing to help to get veterans enrolled in programs. So, and there's a whole public affairs office for that. So I would probably answer, RFIs, RFQs, for those specific capabilities. I know like GSA had a whole marketing team, for government solutions that way. So I'm not big. I don't know that much about marketing, so I'm not going to answer well on that one. Is this chart something you developed or something that is part of a school or practice? No, I wrote this. I created this. I created this actually when I was on loan to the VA from the AI Center of Excellence from GSA. And this helped to identify the journey that folks were going through. So it's time for probably a refinement where I'm short-circuiting things, areas. But I created this, just like I created the capability maturity model. Let's see what else. Can you give us an example of how VA plans to use AI to improve veteran experience? Yeah, I'm working with the CX Insights team who supports VEO. Um, in a next slide or two, we'll show how we've got the chatbot for information. Um, but there's a whole number of different capabilities that are in play at the VA. Things like VA profile to improve on understanding the veteran's needs, and it's the authoritative source for all veteran information. There's a whole host of other programs, but yeah, that give you a little insight on that. But the information assistant is where we're going to move next for that chatbot and RAG pipeline. Well, what's the next question? What are the most needed skills, experience that will be needed for both individual and customer companies? The skills and experience that go beyond the superficial posers. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm always looking out for posers. I have some knowledge, skills, and abilities, just like in that people ops layer. I've got some new ones that I just generated for 2025 that describe sort of the role of the AI engineer and the AI developer that I'll share here shortly. Well, maybe I'll pull it up right now. Let's see. So here's one right here that so what I do is usually create engineering and developer guide, and this is what I'm doing. This is new for 2025. And I wrote, this is just a draft so I can have the team members help build it. But basically, our Summit platform operates on Azure government. So first of all, you look at the platform, like I said, in that cloud ops layer, and you have to identify some of the other capabilities. Now, we have Red Hat OpenShift as well in our for secure container platform, and we have AWS services started, so I can be multi-cloud. So I've got that started for this year. So you identify those primary platforms and the core platforms that provide the AI, ML, data analytics, and storage services. So that's what we're using. Um, we've got some supplementary capabilities in AWS. It hasn't been built out yet, but you kind of do this when you're working with the federal agency to dial into those knowledge, skills, and abilities you're going to need. You got to know what those platforms are. You got to know what the key tools and services for us, Neo4j, Starburst, Cosmos DB, Azure Data Lake, Blob Storage, S3, data governance. You look at those tools. Development tools, like you look at Jupyter Lab. Now, why do I pick Jupyter Lab? I love Jupyter Lab because it's used in Azure Databricks. It's used in Azure ML. It's used in SageMaker. It's all, Collab, Google Collab. It's all SageMaker or Jupyter under the hood. And so if you know Jupyter, you can work on any of those platforms. The other one's Visual Studio. So if you go, let's see, we go here, I use Jupyter Lab here locally. Like I was mentioning that paper. Well, I broke that paper and I put it in Jupyter format so I can run code as well. And then the other tool that I use is VS Code. When I'm going to describe things like, LangGraph with uh, capabilities, I can put in, and you can run Jupyter notebooks inside of VS Code. And these are all open source, so you don't have to spend money on it. So that's a good way to go. Let's go to the next one. Oh, well, let me just show one last thing on the VS. So you identify those roles, right? Understand the personas, like, and then you build out for AI engineer, you got the knowledge, skills, and abilities. Like for knowledge, they're proficient in infrastructure as code tools. For us, Terraform, familiarity with the CI/CD pipelines and DevSecOps practices, understanding of cloud architectures, expertise in security frameworks, skills, writing, testing, maintaining Terraform scripts, abilities, build and maintain scalable security infrastructure, tasks. So then I write out the tasks that they're going to have to do. And collaborate with the AI developers to ensure infrastructure meets needs, right? And here's some of the related roles. Now, the reason why I have a specific AI engineer, because I need to pull from the cloud infrastructure engineers, the DevSecOps specialists, the automation engineers, and the system architects. And then for AI developers are more your data scientists, right? They're proficient in Python, R, or other programming languages, right? They understand cloud native development on Azure ML, Azure OpenAI, SageMaker, Bedrock, Databricks. They know the AI model lifecycle from experimentation to deployment. And those skills are developing, training, fine-tuning AI models, and using those cloud services. And they need to leverage data governance tools like our Calibra and Immuta for data compliance. They need to be able to create REST APIs and integrate those AI models into applications. So here are some of the tasks, So once you've identified, your cloud infrastructure, the tools you use, you have to create those knowledge, skills, abilities, and tasks, and then identify those related roles, because then these go right into the position descriptions that you use. All right, so let's get back to the presentation. All right, so we've talked a little bit about this journey map, and
All right, Joe, did you want to see the results of the poll?
yeah, definitely.
Let me go ahead and share those.
All right, so biggest challenges for adopting AI, data quality and availability. Yeah, we're seeing that as well. Data quality is a big deal, but as data scientists and data engineers, we're working on that. That's a big job. So you can definitely land some contracts for data quality. Compliance and regulatory hurdles. Now, this is probably the biggest one. All the executive orders, all the risk management frameworks. It's a lot of scare tactics, in my humble opinion, because if you understand the technology and understand the risks, then you apply risk mitigations and then you start moving on smartly. Because if you can't get over those compliance and regulatory hurdles, you got no place in the business doing this. So that's, so as federal contractors coming into the support agencies, you're really going to need to know those hurdles and diffuse those potential landmines that you're going to, that you're going to run into constantly. Lack of technical expertise and talent. So, 50 of you said, this, and it's true, right? You've got a lot of people that don't know what they're doing in the federal space. And it takes sort of somebody that's been around the block for a few years to really understand how to pull a Heisman and get your products across the finish line. Because you got the compliance regulatory hurdles, you got the risk management, and it's not just the technical expertise of knowing how to get it done. It's the ability, that steadfast doggedness, to get the job done. You don't find that either. So you won't find somebody that's technically competent and know how to get it done. Like that is a rare talent. Funding and resource constraints. Yeah, I see that a little bit, but I think even with the new administration, we're going to see a lot of funding going to AI and automation to reduce the size and scope of federal government. So I think we're going to see a surge in AI, actually. Organizational culture, resistance to change. Absolutely. This is a big one for us. The folks in CDW are on-prem, and they do not like it moving to the cloud. I can tell. And so even in my space, I'm running into hurdles because they don't want the cloud to be successful. So, I'm running into my own hurdles, and every agency is the same way. So the innovation adoption resistance is tough. It's tough because people know SQL and they know on-prem stuff and they are very comfortable in that. And to get them to evolve is very difficult. So yeah. All right, good polling question. All right, so let's talk a little bit about where am I not moving? All right, so we talked a little bit about the AI ML community of practice. In 2024, we were able to have 36 sessions, like that timeline I showed you. In February, we started the community of practice right in line with when Azure OpenAI became federally available, um, and on MAG. And so let me just show sort of a list of what we did there. So I just put together a year in review, and I did this very easily. I used ChatGPT to take in all the transcripts from all the 36 sessions, and in February, we started right off with prompt engineering with Llama models, and we explored techniques for guiding Llama and Azure OpenAI models with emphasis on reducing hallucinations and optimizing structured outputs. Now, all of this summarization was done with a large language model by pulling in those transcripts. Pretty amazing, right? So, and it took me maybe, I don't know, it took me longer to pull down the transcripts than it took me to like put it in a text format and feed it into the ChatGPT. So fine tuning with Databricks for RAG pipelines. Now, if you don't know what RAG pipelines are, they're retrieval augmented generation. This is where you can utilize your own work information and utilize and harness those large language models to work on that data. So think like a whole tranche of policy documents that you can now you can chunk and vectorize, put into what we use. AI searches our vector database, and we allow the Azure OpenAI ChatGPT for Omni to interact with it and answer questions, do question answering, and do summarization like I did here. You can do a survey of large language models. This is that paper I broke down to break down an overview of the LLM families and all the different architectures. In March, we did a little bit of causal inference in data science. This is a neat, interesting statistical method. It's not considered AI, but it was definitely a one-off that we had one of the experts in causal inferencing provide a brief. Azure OpenAI services, since they were coming, and we knew it was going to be FedRAMP High. We didn't know when, but we knew it was coming. We started really turning on the spigot about training the different teams on Summit, how those Azure OpenAI tools can be used and enhance data analytic workflows. And then we talked a little bit about ML ops principles and best practices. And we focused on some of the individual ML ops techniques to ensure consistent, reproducible ML workflows. And I'll talk about ML flow towards the end as we get moving. Go along. All right, in Azure AI Studio and generative AI, we talked about APIM, which is the API manager. In May 2024, ML ops with Databricks Part 2. Synthetic data generation and masking tools. Now you'll find that generating synthetic data is important to test somebody's hypothesis real quickly before they go to live data, or you want to create synthetic data for new tools that are generally available and they're not FedRAMP High yet. Again, we went out with Azure OpenAI and service implementation. Talked about overcoming some of the implementation challenges. Role-based access control refinements. You're going to find that is a big hurdle in these FedRAMP High environments or FISMA High. I mean, they are just locked down, and it's really hard to take a new service and get it. So you're going to find that as you start moving out on AI. Introduction to ML Flow. I created this quick Azure pricing calculator integrated with ML Flow to show how to track cost metrics. ML Flow is built into Databricks, and Azure ML Flow also integrated. So that's kind of why we've adopted it. August, we talked about building an AI inventory for SDP, prompt flow, Databricks. I know we're kind of running. We got about 10 minutes left. How are we doing, Mauricio, on time? We got about 10 minutes, I think.
No, we actually can go till 12:30.
Oh, okay, good. All
Yeah,
right,
okay,
good.
that's
So
no problem.
I don't need to rush this then. All
Correct.
right,
You have about 40
so
minutes.
Databricks AI security framework. Now, this is what I've adopted. Databricks, when I was looking at AI, so when you look at FedRAMP uses Rev 4 and Rev 5 controls. VA is still on Rev 4, and that is the NIST 853 controls. So this is where I was saying you really have to have a good understanding of the controls because why? Well, the NIST 853 only has controls for cybersecurity. There's really no mention of AI. But there are other frameworks for like DASIV that I've worked with the DASIV team to map the 800 controls with the new DASIV controls that focus starting with the raw data all the way to the deployed model and all the like MITRE, Atlas, and attack framework mitigations that you have to endure. So you have all these risks that you need to add to your AI. So this in August, we really started hitting that hard because we need to focus on risk mitigations. We have to look at bias. So there's the whole responsible AI piece. And then there's the adversarial attacks that we have to watch out for. Now, being internally focused and not external, we don't have to worry so much about adversarial attacks from the outside. So that knocks down the risk pretty well. I'm going to give a talk in June on the DASIF framework that I use at the VA. Now, this is the other way, like I said, if you're going to do AI, you have to be smarter than the security analysts to get your capability deployed across the finish line because there's going to be so many risks. Well, did you think about this? Did you think about that? Or how are you securing this? So the DASIF framework is a good way to go. So look up DASIF and look at the risk mitigations. DASIF is good because it has the risk ID and it has the control ID or the controls that you have to mitigate the risks with. So it's a good way. What I've done is I've developed questions for each one of the risks. How am I managing this risk? Well, I'm putting this control in place. In some of the controls are mapped to the 853 controls. So again, like I said, you should, you got to be this high to ride this ride. In security and AI. So to get those products across into production, I'm stomping my foot here. You really have to know the security landscape. RBACs and synthetic data on this talk focused on RBAC customizations and use of synthetic data to ensure compliance. And then custom RAG chatbot development. Now, this is where we started highlighting. So in August, we just started highlighting this public sector information assistant. If you do a Google search on public sector information assistant, it should take you to either the YouTube or the GitHub that has all the open public capabilities. Now, what I've done, again, to short circuit the production of this, is I brought in the two Microsoft folks, Arpita and Ryan, that are working on the infrastructure, and the one's an AI engineer, the other's an AI developer, but they'll both tell me they're both. They're helping to build this so we can leverage this capability on Azure MAG environments. So that's one way we're building that RAG pipeline. September, the Azure AI search for RAG pipelines. We talked a little bit about AI search. You're going to know that if you're going to build a RAG pipeline, you're going to need that vector database. And then we talked a little bit about function calling, and function calling is used quite a bit with agents. And for domain specific tasks. So you can have the LLM call out to a function and execute something very specific for you. GraphRag, Microsoft came out with a knowledge graph integration to store relationships, and we're going to be harnessing that pretty soon as well. Now, I designed this LLM application course design, so I drafted a graduate level because there's just so much information. So like I was showing earlier, you can go here, it's AA-LLM course, and I'll put that in the chat in a little bit. But essentially, course objectives is to just, I think there was a question about, hey, is there going to be a course to get a deeper understanding of LLMs and their applications? And this is what I've started with, and because I'm starting to build these advanced applications with LLM, so why not build a course around it? And so it does a weekly breakdown and project integration. So week one is all the introduction to generative AI, LLMs, and key terminology. Week two is API usage, how to connect with the different chat interfaces through API calling. And then evaluation. So what you're going to find as soon as you start is you're going to want to evaluate, your LLM. Is your prompt engineering well? So that's where we can start getting into prompt engineering. So these are prompt engineering techniques that how you design your prompts to get the best responses back. And I'll show you in the course a little bit how I did prompt engineering for a medical AI assistant. And then retrieval augmented generation. I'm in the process of designing a RAG process, and a lot of that has to do with ingesting data and then be able to vectorize that data and then putting it somewhere like AI search. Or there's a whole nother database that's environment or genre that's starting to build is this vector database idea. Function calling with LLMs, open source LangChain and Llama index frameworks, building AI assistants, and that's basically that's a big area this year that we're going to be working after. Integration into interactive applications. How do those agents interact with clinicians? That's going to be important, I think, moving as we move and we mature. Assistant API integration, chatbot evaluation. How do you evaluate the chatbot performance? Fine-tuning LLMs. This is when you can take the open source ones and you can fine-tune them on a project. There's a lot of code ones like Llama Code or Code Llama, which is focused on Python and other languages, so it can give you better responses back for your coding. Graph data structures. So graph is becoming bigger and bigger. We've got Neo4j, but we're going to use things like LangGraph and GraphRag from Microsoft. Week 13 is project preparation. So the whole idea here is to build an actual product and how to apply responsible AI practices and then present, and then final projects. So I put this in terms of a course. Because I'm doing it, I mean, I might as well build a course while I'm building out these capabilities. Now, another thing you can do, start on your own right now is just, get ChatGPT. Just start with ChatGPT. I use it every day. There's another one, Gemini. Gemini is the Google one. It's not bad, and they're always advancing, and you can select what you want to use with the free version, and there's some of these you got to pay for the more advanced or pro version. Claude is another one. That's a good one. Perplexity. I hear good things about Perplexity. I haven't used it that much. I also use a lot of these capabilities for my PhD research. So I use SciSpace, which uses large language models, and you can chat with your PDF. So it's got its own internal RAG pipeline. And then I use connected papers to identify how, like, this Radford paper is connected to some of these other capabilities in my research. So, these capabilities, these large language models are creeping into the research side. So you're going to see an exponential, these papers are coming every day. So look at inside here, you can see my papers, and there's just, I don't know, a lot of papers. Every day there's a new paper, and I put it in here, and then I read them through here. Like, that's my GitHub. And then if I look at my papers, I'm like, all right, well, LLM-based agents, let me pull that in and read about that, and then pull that. What I plan to do is just pull all these into my RAG pipeline and be able to ask questions of the latest papers. All right, let's get back to that presentation. This might be a good time to take a polling question.
All right. Launching another polling question.
All right, so this is a healthcare related one. I'm doing this for selfish purposes. Which AI/ML use cases do you think holds the most promise for improving healthcare and related services? Oh, we got quite a few questions. Yeah, what courses or education would you recommend to get more familiar with AI implementation in government contracting? Wow. Since this is such a new field, I don't know of any yet that I've seen for government contracting. I see a little bit of internal work at the VA where they want to be able to process things using AI. So I'm not really quite sure. If anybody has seen anybody, please share, but I haven't seen any. How can AI benefit a federal government, small business, let's see, construction contractor, technical writing proposals? Yeah, absolutely. What I do is, when the executive order came out, it was a huge document. I put that all into ChatGPT and I said, all right, hey, listen, I summarize this for me and take out the main points and then, help me write, let me operationalize what it's asking. And so I can put it into my pipeline. That's when I found Dassive, did a better job than I did because it was taking from all the different risk management frameworks. And so that's what I do when I have big complex documents. So if you get an RFI or an RFQ, pull it into ChatGPT and or your large language model of choice. Ask it to summarize it. It's my go-to now, and then ask it. Say, hey, write me a technical proposal. Get me started on a draft. Here's my format, and you can even give it the format for your technical proposals, and say, hey, this is my technical proposal format. Here's the RFI RFQ. Please write me a draft in this format, and it will spit you out a format. I mean, it's pretty amazing. So, good stuff. What's missing in teams? In teams is community of practice with understanding, not knowledge. How, what, and why of monitoring AI in deployed production environment? How can I help teams on this during community of practice discussion? What's missing in teams community of practice? In my community of practice, um, I can't release because it's a record session. I can't release specifics of how we are chomping on real data, but we can use synthetic data to showcase the pipeline because we have a dev environment that we use synthetic data. So I would say generating synthetic data, put it in your dev environment, and then presenting on that dev environment. That's what we use the dev environment for. And we showcase any of the new tools that are incoming. That's how you can kind of short circuit that and help teams during the community practice session. And what I do is now, we usually have these hour-long sessions, and I'm gonna start breaking it up because most of the senior folks, I figure out who's who in the zoo to see if they present. If they present, then I know they're one of my senior people. They're just chomping at the bit to show off their skills, their mad skills, and I love that. But I've got to get some more of the introverted junior people to present. So now I'm starting to carve out the community practice in maybe 20-minute blocks or 30-minute blocks so they don't have to shoulder the whole hour. So that would help. All right, let's see the results of our priority use cases. Which AI ML use case do you think holds the most promise for improving healthcare? Okay. Streamlining healthcare workflows. Absolutely. That's a big one. We're using RPA, but we're seeing that you need more advanced capabilities for scheduling and triage and generalization using large language models and agents. So we're moving to an agent framework. Predictive analytics for patient outcomes. Absolutely. That's what the Clever pipeline's all about. We chomp on 1.5 million TIU nodes every day. It takes $15. It's only $15 on the Synapse Spark infrastructure to chomp on that much data, and then about $5 for Azure OpenAI to do the classification. And we've got around 20 or 25 constructs or social determinants we're looking for, anything from PTSD to drug abuse, you know, there's a whole host. There's many. And we work with the clinician, the folks that are leading that, and we help them and it fills out into a dashboard. Another one is claims processing and benefits administration. Absolutely. We want to help the adjudicators chomp on all that information they have to look at and help them make a determination faster. Personalized care and telehealth solutions. Absolutely. That's a big one. I like how you guys are clicking on some of these. Absolutely. Personalized care. In the prompt engineering for my medical assistant, I actually started adding in bedside or chairside manners to benefit because a lot of doctors are a little icy cold sometimes and they just need to be reminded to be a little bit more friendly. Good answers back in the poll. All right, so let's take a look at where I'm heading for 2025. So the big thing where I'm heading, and you should be thinking about, is AI product strategy and management. So if in your AI capability maturity model, you've got to get there where you can take the AI inventory of lost toys, essentially. That's what I call it, is sort of the inventory of lost toys, because there's great ideas there, but then, the idea was maybe so last year or a couple of years ago that before even large language models. And we got to revisit those and make sure we have that backlog. And we're like, oh, we can take that one on. Hey, that's a good idea. We have one that's similar. So that's what we're finding. Like the Clever pipeline, we have two other pipelines that we're looking at, NPR, and we have another one called CCTS, which tracks cancer. Identifies cancer in patient very quickly. So we're scaling that and chomping on that data using that same Synapse Spark infrastructure and using the Azure OpenAI as a classifier with a very, very tight prompt engineering capability. And we look at those prompts to make sure the classifier. So we're actually using the large language model as a classifier without having to train our own model. So it's actually getting really good results back. Advanced multi-agent systems and automation. So like I said, we are definitely moving in this. This is going to be a big area for us this year. In designing and orchestrating those AI agents is very complex, but it can help break down. So as a good computer scientist, I love to break down complex problems into smaller, finite bits that are solvable. And that's what the agents are going to be doing. But then they coordinate across tasks to achieve really good results. So I think that's going to be a big play for us in 2025. Now, you can't do AI without being hit on the head with the responsible and compliant AI stuff. So you really got to have your wits about you. Microsoft has a great responsible AI program. So we apply a lot of that. VA has a responsible AI program. We follow a lot of that and make sure that it's a part of our impact assessment. Now, ML ops at scale, like I had mentioned, once your data ops layer is done, you start building those enterprise pipelines because you got to make sure that the data pipelines are cogent and they're operational. Sometimes you get these timeout errors, when you're doing the ETLs, and you've got to fix that stuff before you start on the ML ops, because that's where you're starting to apply, the large language models or the trained models on that pipeline. And then you start looking at these patterns. Once you have these patterns recognized and proved into production, then you can just jump right in to start scaling some of these things. So it's pretty interesting how this is starting to evolve. Now, the other big area is vision and advanced modalities. So medical and healthcare have a lot of imagery. We've got around 15, I want to say, petabytes of data. I mean, there's a lot of data on imagery. Everything from MRIs, which is sort of this moving video, all the, to sonograms, to X-rays, to you name it. I mean, there's just so much imagery. So there's advanced modalities with GPT vision and that we can start putting into RAG workflows now. But we're going to be building on that as that improves. Just basic OCR, object character recognition of images, making sure you've got the right X-ray because it has the patient's name on it associated with the TIU node or whatever. So just little things like that we'll start off with, but we're going to start doing classifiers as well. Hey, is that a lung tumor? Things like that. So that's going to be heading more into the future. All right, so big reveal. So this is that information assistant that I was talking about. This is that chat bot that you can work with your data. And so right here, you've got two tabs, work only or generative, which means you're not working on your data. So we have this set up in dev test now. We are playing around with it, and we're going to start adjusting these prompts. Like right now, this is the open source prompts that you can just click on and it'll ask that question. Now, it's just like what I was showing. So you can see that this is very similar to, ChatGPT. So very similar. Here you can upload your data, but you don't have sort of this, there's only so much you can do. Um, with with this information assistant, you can let's go to the next slide. You can chat again, you can chat directly just like ChatGPT. Um, Oh, let's just talk about really briefly. Here's the information on the side. So when you click the upper right-hand corner, you can see the instance that you're working on. That's the resource group. You can look at the GPT model we're using for Omni. The model version was May 13. The embeddings, now that's when you pull into AI search, which is your vector database, it needs to embed, it needs to chunk the data and create those embeddings. And then, and then it puts it into this vector index. That way, the large language model can work on it. And here's some of the supported file types. So you've got XML, JSON, CSV, TSV, text. All the productivity software is handled, like PowerPoints, DocX, XLS, Excel, Word. PDFs. This is a big one. All the policy documents are in PDF format. So we've got over 4,000 policy documents at the VA. I'm working on a project right now with our data governance leads. And in here, you can just create a new folder, VA policy. Oh, I'm sorry. VA policy and, upload all your information. Meanwhile, there's a whole pipeline that you're monitoring about the upload status. And in that, you determine whether or not it broke the queue or not. I've done that a couple of times. So we're working to make it a little more robust. The other thing is you can do web HTML. So I could scan and pull in, web scrape all the VA HTML, and I could actually vectorize that and index it. And then we'd have a centralized place to ask questions across the VA. And then, of course, email messages. You could probably take any email messages and upload those as well. So say you had your own work group and it's very, very tightly controlled work group. And you want to get all correspondence between you and a veteran or a patient or whatever your mission is. You could probably vectorize that as well. So I haven't tested that yet, but that's where we're moving. Up in the right-hand corner, you can see a Math Assistant preview and the Tabular Data Assistant preview. Those are actually agents. And this is where I link the agents. Now, what I'm taking a stance on was containerizing the agents so they're extensible and they're scalable to multiple teams. Right now, I have a backlog of around 12 customers to implement this information assistant. And so they have different products they want to work with in different teams and different reasons. But the bones are good on this. This gives me my chatbot, it gives me my RAG pipeline, and it gives me my agent infrastructure to do more advanced things. So I think that's where we're heading with the Microsoft team. All right, this is a good time to probably take a polling question. And while we're doing the polling question, let's see, what aspects of responsible AI do you find most critical for government deployments? Yeah, ensuring data privacy and security, reducing bias, maintaining transparency. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I would probably select them all, but for me, getting across that into the production is understanding the data privacy and the security. Because if you don't know that, you're never going to reduce bias. You're never going to get the product into production. We do a good job of maintaining transparency and explainability. I'll show you that in MLflow in one of the slides. Regulatory compliance and ethics review. Yeah, that's a good one. I'm trying to weave in the AI compliance with the data governance team because they're already doing a lot of that. but they're like, we don't want that. We're not funded for that. But I'm like, you need to take it because it's all data. So there's a little fight there between AI governance and data governance. Let's look at some questions. Oh, yeah. So yeah, 52% ensuring data privacy and security. Second is maintaining transparency and explainability. Yeah. Yeah. Good pull. All right. So what are the biggest challenges in integrating AI into federal contracting workflows? So the challenge is just working with the contracting professionals who have time to actually provide me their requirements. That's, honestly, contracting has its own privacy and security required. You can't have everybody seeing that. You got to have strict teams, but you could develop a work group that is just for the contracting team to work and chomp on these documents. So, like I said, you could create this information assistant uh, to be able to work securely with a single work group. So I don't, it's to me, if I'm working with clinicians with PII and patient data, like I can easily go over the contract side and do that. We have an FSC, that Financial Service Centers request to do this similarly. They want to start chomping on all the financial policy documents first and be able to ask questions of it, the VAR, the FAR, all that stuff. I'm not a big contracting guy. I do technical reviews and that's about it. Um, but I like to work in everybody's backyard. So give me the germane data. I will upload it into a vector store and then I'll be able to ask questions. You'll all be able to ask questions of it. All right, from a CI/CD perspective, have you implemented Kubernetes in order to streamline data from different cloud providers and build a data agnostic environment? Well, the best army we've got so far is, we mirror data from on-prem from Azure Data Lake into S3. Now we do take a feed into our Azure, we have an open Red Hat OpenShift. We have OpenShift as our Kubernetes environment. It's called VA Platform One, and we do utilize that for secure container development. But as far as the standardizing the data, the best I can say is for us, we've just done mirrored pulls between AWS and Azure right now. That's about the best answer I can give you. So, Rafa, take me from novice to the next step down. Okay. You got to be this high to ride the AI ride. I'm sorry. Let's see. What is the RMF process only mentioned at the end instead of being incorporated throughout the process? Well, risk mitigation framework. Yeah, that's a big one. Like I work a lot on that. I try to build that into our architecture. So it's just a part of it. It's sort of just germane to the AI engineer. When we do the security impact assessment, that's where we understand where we're going to mess with the ATO. Now, for us, our ATO is under Rev 4, so we have 18 control families. But understanding we're going to be shifting to Rev 5 at some point, so that's 20 control families in different levels of enhancements. So it's structured a little bit differently. So understanding those controls and then understanding DASIF. So DASIF is where some capabilities, controls map pretty well with some of the DASIF controls, but a lot don't. Like there's a lot of AI stuff that's still in the ether that isn't under like the AI risk management framework from NIST, things like that. And it's up to each ATO, like almost, to understand what the risks are and mitigate those risks. So, and I get those approved through our ISO, right? So, yeah. So,
Excuse me, Joe,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but just a time check. We have about 10 minutes left. So,
Okay.
so
All right. So let's get back to, we'll try and finish up some of these. All right. So anybody, that's doing this machine learning, I think I stole this from Microsoft at one point. But it really just shows how to prototyping, the training, and the operationalizing, those capabilities. But it's a cycle, and the only reason I want to show this is there's little mini cycles to all of this. A lot of hypothesis testing and evaluating and experimenting first. And if you're going to dive into AI, well, you got to know there's a lot of experimentation, and you need to factor that into the project. The art of the possible. That's where the data science side comes. You've got to be able to experiment on the data. What data do you have? And start there. And it's like, okay, you don't have it. Well, this is the data we're going to need. What do you want to achieve? It all starts with the use case. In Calibra, I created a AI use case metadata model, and then I created ML models as a metadata model to work with all the data set metadata models. Because at the highest level, I have this AI use case, and then ML models work on data sets. So you might have like this fraud use case where you have the AI use case aids to detect fraud, but you might be using models for different data sets. Hey, I have this one data set with these features. I have another data set with these features. Well, I'm going to use model A for those features and identifying patterns of fraud. And then here I've got this model B to identify patterns of this sort of data. So the use case sort of is that higher level capability. And that's where that use case inventory comes from. So MLflow, I talked a little bit about this, and this is sort of a discrete process starting from data prep to exploratory analysis, the feature engineering, the model training, model validation. Now think about LLMs now, not so much model training, but using a model and then doing model validation to see if it's coming back with as good or better than training your own model. And if you've got to train your own model, you got to train your own model, but that uses up more CPU and it's a little bit more maintenance. And then deploy the model, and then you monitor that model, and then start that whole cycle over again. So you see this little cycle here, but I like the way MLflow works. MLflow, like I said, is integrated in a lot of our products already. Databricks is the shepherd for MLflow. It's integrated into their products. It's integrated into Azure MLflow, although they do a little bit of a different take, but you can still use the same tagging. Now look, you've got this data governance. I like how they did the personas. You got the data governance overall. You got a data engineer at the beginning, data science in the middle, ML engineer at the end, with the business stakeholder ensuring that the use case is working. So MLflow is a good way to go. And MLflow gives you a tracking server essentially. So you take your notebooks, any logical apps, the cloud jobs, and you track what you're doing. So when a data science says he's working on it, well, here you can check, and you can share the tracking server response, and you can look at the artifacts, the metrics, the parameters, the models being used, and the like. And it also can track your models and link into your different ML libraries like scikit-learn, TensorFlow, Spark, PyTorch, Keras, you name it, and then output into containers or to Spark or whatever you're working on. And then you can use it as a registry. So if you train a model, you can use it as a registry. We're having a hard time across cloud platforms, not going to lie, about where do we put the models? So are we going to log them in Calibra? So I think we're going to log them in Calibra, maybe have a MLflow model registry. Right now it's a little bit ad hoc, which I hate to say, but it is. But we're working to kind of solidify that as the maturity increases. Now here's a run. This is an experiment that I did for an Azure pricing calculator where I do, at the bottom, you see Azure pricing data ingestion. And, I filter. And the next step is to filter government regions. And I call it, and I can track these in my Jupyter notebook. I aggregate the VM sizes. I merge VM sizes with US Gov prices. I have to fill NANDs in the merged data set. I create embeddings, and I stored in a NOI, which is a vector data set. This was before I had access to AI search. That one didn't work, and then this one didn't work, or it did work, and I had to finagle with it. But you can see, as a data scientist, I was going through my steps, and then I did a cost estimation for this VA publications use case. So getting a cost estimation is pretty tough. It takes a little bit, but here, Microsoft actually provides an API where you can pull in all the data instead of using the Azure pricing calculator that they have. I built my own essentially. So that's how you use ML flow, is to sort of track your experiment to see if it's going to be useful for you. All right, so let's go back to the questions and let's see if we can run out the rest of those questions. Yeah, Robert, feel free to share architectures. I love it. Public affair offices. Okay, I'm not sure what that is. Manage. Oh, AI small business. Oh, that's a good link, Michael. Thank you. How does a novice data analytic business get into the VA workspace? Oh, there's a couple of different ways. But usually folks jump on, they're a sub to a prime contract, and that's how they jump in. But I'm not the expert on that. I'm deep in enemy territory inside the VA, actually building products. So I'm not sure about the acquisition side. How can we address the executive teams and ownership's concern with security when it comes to AI? Data leaks, data security is top priority at my org, and resentment to new technologies is significant due to security breach. Yep. Yes, anonymous attendee. Yeah, I totally get that. Like, you have got to be smarter on the Rev 4, Rev 5 controls than even the security analysts. So when you go toe to toe with the security analyst, you need to be like, hey, here's the DASA framework. This is what I use. I would recommend the DASA framework because I've mapped it. So the new one that's coming out, it should be out in January here, that I helped Databricks with, should have the mapped NIST 800 controls. And it has other controls like the ISO controls. So it has all the mapped controls when you're focusing on data and AI. So I really liked how Databricks did that, and that's why I helped them. Next question. Our AI ML platform will take unstructured data and place it into a base data format. Yeah, yeah. So what do you put in that base data format? So that's cool. I mean, that's a good way to go. We have a lot of that going on. So when the ETL works, we put it into another format. That's right. It's a good way to go. All right, anonymous attendee, 3 related questions. Dang, dude. What is your advice for folks who are reticent about using LLMs because of data privacy concerns? Absolutely. So we had to run through the privacy concerns, but we did a in-depth analysis on MAG, which is Microsoft Azure Government. All of the data contained is in its own private cloud for government. That's why we use Azure Government. It is very restrictive, but when we use the LLM isn't respondent back to Azure or Microsoft or anybody. It is just us. All the data, everything that we produce is contained within MAG. So that's how we handle the privacy concerns. That data is not going anywhere. And plus, the PII, PHI training for us for data privacy. Everybody has to have it to interact with patient data or veteran benefit data. And usually, we don't mix a lot of those together. So the healthcare is on one side, the benefits are on another, and financials on another. So we separate that way as well. What is your view on the value of data protections offered by DuckDuckGo AI? Oh, I don't know anything about DuckDuckGo. Now, when you're using these ones, like these open source models like ChatGPT, you're going to have to go into a temporary chat. That's private mode. So, you're right now, I don't care. I like my stuff. When I use the regular mode, I like all my information listed so I can go back to that chat. And when I'm asking ChatGPT now about something, I get responses back that's germane to me. So I like it keeping a history. I don't care what they do with it. Other people are more privacy conscious. So if you're privacy conscious, use the temporary chat so it's private. Gemini, I think they might do the same thing. I'm not really sure, but find the private chat piece. But that's, you'll have to read through each one of these vendors about temporary chat. Now, I don't use VA stuff on this. This is my private computer right now. This is where I do a lot of my research. When I get on the VA side, I use my infrastructure or information assistant for that. All right, looks like we're at the bottom of the hour.
Yeah, Joe, yeah, sorry to interrupt, but we are at time. I did want to ask is if it's possible. I know we didn't get to a lot of the questions. If it's possible, if we can send some of those to you, and if you can get back, that we can work with you on maybe getting some answers and maybe summarizing them if they're repetitive. Can we work with you on that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Feel free to send it. I'm here to help veterans. I mean, I'm in service to veterans at the VA, you know. So,
Wonderful.
if you're a veteran and you need help getting started, I've been doing this for, I don't know, 30 years now. The AI has been top of mind for the last 6 or 8 since I've worked at Oak Ridge National Labs training models. So I've really we can definitely help you get started.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We really appreciate all the outstanding, very informative presentation, great information. We I noticed a lot of very positive feedback in the comments, so I know it's great to see. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day. I think everyone agrees it was very beneficial. As a reminder to everyone, the slides and a video recording from today's session will be provided to you at the end of the 4 sessions that we talked about. I just want to thank everyone for joining us today, and a real special thank you to our speaker, Joe Raetano, for taking the time to make this webinar possible. Before we wrap up, everyone's gonna see a very brief anonymous survey pop up, and if you're able to take that, we would really appreciate it. And and just in closing, this, as I mentioned, this is only the first of 4 sessions. So we are going to get back on Thursday with someone, a name many of you may recognize, Miss Gloria Larkin, who's going to be talking about marketing to the federal government using AI and some of the issues and how you can work with AI to help you in your marketing efforts with other agencies. So with that, thank you again, Joe. Really appreciate all the great information, and we will be bidding everyone goodbye. Thank you, and have a great rest of your week. Thank you, Joe. Take care, everyone.
Hey, we've got another call-in number. We want to jump over to that.